Hello, welcome to the end of a very long week. We started this week with daylight saving time ending and anxiety leading up to the election. Since Tuesday, I think most of us have been hitting refresh constantly on our news sites as the numbers have trickled in. Most of us have gotten less sleep this week and less work done. But that's okay. Tonight, we're excited to hear Chris speak about work and also to just take some time and space to slow down together. So, to start our meeting, let's take some time to take a few slow, deep breaths and to make ourselves present to God.
Hi everyone, happy Friday. This was a really rough week, like Lorraine mentioned, so congrats on making it all, on having come through it all. And so, if this is your first time, this is Claremont Christian Fellowship, and we are a community that is open and welcoming of everyone. I'm looking forward to being with you all tonight and hopefully de-stressing together and finishing out the week together. My name is Thumam, I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a senior at Pomona, and I will be your MC for tonight. So let's start with some announcements. The first announcement for today is the post CCF Zoom Hangout. So please come join us after fellowship. There will be a Zoom link in the CCF group chat on Messenger, as well as it's already on the Facebook group. And so if you would like to be added to any of these, let us know and come hang out and be in community with us after Friday Fellowship ends. And the second announcement is the workout on Saturdays with Matt. We have a workout from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. And if you have never been or if you've been every week, please join us. It's an exciting time to be in community and work out together and get sweaty and bond. And this is a very chill space and encouraging, and there's no pressure to compete or perform in any way. And the third announcement for this week is that after this Friday, we will only have 2 more Friday fellowships. The semester has gone by really fast, and so we will only have 2 more Fridays left before finals happen and the semester ends. And so please make sure to join us for those to be with one another and finish the semester together. And next week, we will be going back into our Shalom in the News series, and the speaker will be Donald Abram, who is a Pomona graduate from the class of 2016, and he'll be speaking with the reckoning with our past, seeking change for the future, and looking at how we can seek change and really think honestly about both the current and historical oppression that has happened, and also how Christianity has been complicit in a lot of that. So please make sure to join us for that next week. And the Friday after next week will be the last one. And this semester has been really strange and gone by so fast. And we're glad to have been with you all throughout this semester and been together and, yeah, kind of ridden the waves of both the ups and the downs. And I'm grateful to have stayed connected with you all, even though it's been in weird 2D virtual space. And I want to give a special shout out and a congratulations to our first years who are almost done with their first semester at college, which I think is an even bigger achievement than usual because of the fact that it's online and in a weird, separate way. And yeah, please enjoy the rest of fellowship, and I'll see you at the hangout afterwards.
Well, hey everybody, welcome. It has been just a week. I hope you're all doing okay. I'm personally just emotionally spent and exhausted. Very glad that we've gotten as much resolution as we have and sort of just bracing myself for what's to come. I know that like for many of you, it's not just the politics of the moment, but you're also doing your academic work. It's like there's layers to this, right? You've got your usual layer of academic work and stress, which has been compounded by the pandemic and the constrictions and added stress that has caused, and then add on top of that another layer of the political stress and anxiety, which has been felt nationwide by people of all political perspectives. And I know it's really weighing on us. And so it's just been intense. I think for me, this would have been a challenging week even without the election stress. On weeks, this is a little insight into how I think and operate. On weeks when I'm giving a talk like this, I can usually expect to put in about 12 to 20 hours that week, depending on how hard the talk is to write, doing that work. And so that just adds on top of my regular schedule. So whatever other work I need to get done for ministry or I have a side job where I help Lorraine's dad just a couple hours a week, whatever it is, every other one of those activities becomes compressed by this feeling that I should be working on my talk when I'm not working on it. And then when I am, I just don't have time to do these other things. And so a talk week like this is always stressful. And then you add to that my own insecurities and anxieties, where even after all these years, and even though I have no fear about getting up in front of a group of people and speaking, the process of writing a talk just brings out anxieties which hover over my head all week. What if I don't do a good job? What if I let people down? What if? So I hear and I know where you guys are coming from, and I sympathize with the kinds of stresses you feel in your academic lives. And that's why we're sort of taking the most practical approach we can this week, even with everything else going on in the world, and talking about the topic, healing our academic lives, which is part of our continuing series on practices for self-quarantines. We need to think regularly about academics because they're such a big part of everything that we do and where our time goes, even if you've thought about it before. We're really invested in our academic work. It's the whole reason that you all came to college in the first place. It matters to you, but it's also the major source of your suffering and anxiety and drama most of the time during the semester. And today, more than ever, with everything going on, it matters how we handle our academic lives. I think we need to think seriously about them and about how faith in God impacts them. For those of you watching this who are already out in the work world, or those of you who will be soon and are ready to stop thinking about academics, let me just say up front that most of what I say here easily translates to non-academic work as well. And also, while we're at it, I want you to feel free during my talk to post in the comments. If you have questions you want to ask me as I'm going, post them there. You know, it's a conversation. There's not that many of us watching right now. And of course, some of us are watching this recorded. But post your comments or questions. I'll try to respond to them if I see them. Or you can share your own thoughts alongside of mine for others on the feed to see as well. So the Bible doesn't say much about academics, but it has a lot to say about work. The very first chapter of the Bible portrays God doing work in creating the world. And it starts like this, famously. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the waters, the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Now notice, perhaps surprisingly, God doesn't start creation from nothing, even though that's typically how we think of God creating in classical theology. In the Bible, God starts with something. There is this dark, formless void with deep waters. What a weird way to start. Why would that be there? It helps if we understand that early Hebrew readers associated the sea, the waters, with untamed chaos. It was dangerous and out of control. And so part of the nature of how God works, as described in Genesis 1, is taking chaos and darkness and turning it into something new, making it into a world full of abundant life. And the story goes on to portray that God does this in 6 days. So this is the 6-day creation account of the 2 creation accounts in Genesis. And in this one, in the first 3 days, God creates spaces or zones in which the creation can be filled. By the way, I tried to get a picture for this from online beforehand, and it was really hard to do. There's a bunch of good ones out there, and they wanted to charge me money for all of them, and I didn't have time, so sorry, no pictures. So you'll have to picture it in your mind. But in these first 3 days, God creates spaces. Day 1, God creates light and separates light from darkness and calls them day and night. On day 2, God creates sea and sky and separates those from each other. And on day 3, God creates land. So first 3 days, 3 spaces. Then on the next 3 days, God abundantly fills those spaces. So day 4, God fills the day and night with the sun and the moon and stars and constellations. On day 5, God fills the sea and the sky with sea creatures and with birds. And on day 6, God fills the land with animals and people. Now, again, Christians have too often got hung up on the order of things because they're really worried about whether it makes scientific sense or not. I think we can see just from the order of things that sort of a super accurate approach was not what the author was going for. For example, on day 1, the fact that day and night are made on day 1, but it's not until day 4 that the sun and the moon are made. I don't know how you have day and night without a sun, but that's not the point. It's not the purpose of this account. The purpose is trying to present this image of a God who is filling the world, removing the chaos, and then filling the world with abundant life, creating space for goodness and newness and redeeming things. And this is our first image of work in the Bible. The work of God is creative, diverse, and abundant. It doesn't consume, it makes, it creates. It creates space for flourishing. This is work at its best. And in case you're not convinced that we're supposed to see this as work, Genesis 2:1-2 make it explicit. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all their multitude. And on the 7th day, God finished the work that he had done, and he rested on the 7th day from all the work that he had done. Genesis clearly wants us to see this as a model for work, and the text even goes on to use it as a model for the Jewish work week, to work 6 days and then rest on the 7th. So let's stop and ask, do we see our work this way? That the work that we do day in and day out, our studies, the things we produce, our side jobs, whatever we have, that the internships, that this work is meant to be an echo of God's work in creation, to go on to produce life and fullness in the world. See, I think we need, if we're going to heal our academic lives, we need to start by healing our understanding of work itself. What if we lived like the primary purpose of our work wasn't just getting it done and moving on to the next thing, or getting good grades, or securing a paycheck or a career? Those things are good and important, but what if the primary focus of all the work we did, present in our mind, was to somehow continue the work of God's act of creation? Genesis 1 says that God created us, that God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Human beings were made to be like God. We were made to be sort of like God's mini-me's, representations of God in the world. And that's why it's really important in this text that it says male and female, because in the ancient world, it was often assumed that the men were the important ones, but women could be treated as less or as property. And so right here in Genesis 1, there's a statement that all human beings, not just the men, are being created in the image of God, and they have this image on them. And this is why God then tells them to go and be fruitful and multiply, and to fill the earth, and then to exercise dominion over creation. Dominion is not justification to exploit the world and take. It's an invitation to use our God-given powers, the likeness that God has put in us, to continue that same kind of work that God is doing in creating and producing blessing. And I think we see this, right? In the beautiful things people have made, in the achievements of medicine and science and great architecture, so many ways that people have contributed and done beautiful things in the world and things to care for each other and care for the world. But as you know where I'm going with this, all too often we've done the opposite, right? Historian Yuval Harari makes the argument that to other animals in this world, we effectively are gods. Like this thing we're reading about in Genesis 1, it's not just symbolic. In a very real way, to the perception of other animals in this world, we effectively are like God to them. We control their environment. We can dictate their life and their death. We even control their genetics now. We rule over vast numbers of animals as sources of our food in our food chain. And because of how we've ruled the world, we're causing a mass extinction event. As Harari puts it, to the animals we're gods, but we're not necessarily the benevolent kind. This is one thing that disturbed me about this week's election, because one thing that's coming clear to me is we're coming out of this with a very, very divided politic and a government that's probably not going to be able to do much effective work to address the needs that are pressing on us right now. Issues with global warming and injustice and other things that we need to address. It's disturbing. But this is why then our work here in college and afterwards is so important. We need scientists, engineers, and entrepreneurs to create world solutions that can work and help independent of having a functional government. We need historians and sociologists to help us understand humanity and to move us in the right direction. We need artists and creatives to bring beauty to the world and to wake us up to the problems that face us. We need politicians, business leaders, activists, legal experts who will help shape the system to face the challenges ahead. And we need teachers and activists and good parents and good neighbors. And we need to be voracious learners because we need understanding more than ever. What are the goals and values that are shaping your academic life? Are we being shaped by the pursuits of individualistic capitalism? Is this just another investment that we're making to enrich only ourselves and the people closest to us? Or are we actively participating in God's work of blessing and creation and renewal in the world? If we could really reorient our understanding of work, it would change so much. But we also need to take seriously just the difficulties inherent in work itself. We need to heal the brokenness of work as well as our broken understanding of it. Because work can be really hard, enough so that it makes it hard where we even struggle to just hold on to any sense of purpose or perspective at all. And Scripture is honest about this as well. It knows what we're up against. Just a glance at the next 2 chapters of Genesis show us how hard work can be. Now in Genesis 2 and 3, we're given a second and different creation story from the 7-day creation that happens in Genesis chapter 1. And in Genesis chapter 2 and 3, this is the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And I'm not going to tell the whole thing because it's just way too much to get into. I'm just going to focus on the aspect of work that we see there. Because we might think that in paradise, there would be no work. It would be like a permanent vacation. But that's not the case. Genesis chapter 2, verse 15 says this: "The Lord God took the human being and put it in the Garden of Eden to till it and keep it." In other words, right after the creation of the first human being, God gives humanity a job. There's work in paradise. What's different about the work in paradise is that it's not back-breaking toil. It's not even needed for survival. There's no weight hanging on it. There's no threat associated with it. The work of paradise is designed to connect humans with the rest of creation and to give them purposeful activity and responsibility outside themselves so that both they and the rest of creation will flourish together. We need work for flourishing. We need purpose. This is why they tell people who are retiring, not to think of it as retiring from work, but to think of it, have a plan to retire to something else, because purposelessness is terrible for us. We need something to do. But things don't go well in the Garden of Eden, as we all know the story. Adam and Eve break the rules, and they're forced to leave and go out into the outside world. And as they do, they face a world full of difficult challenges, which includes a change to how they work. Genesis chapter 3 says this. God says this to them. Cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread, until you return to the ground. From the responsibility of tending the garden, we suddenly get backbreaking toil just for survival. And for most humans who have ever lived, except for the ruling elites, work has been a constant, frustrating, anxiety-producing, lifelong challenge, which we all have to learn to deal with. Even those of us in positions of privilege who are going to have good jobs that pay well and everything else, work is still going to be a reality in our life for the rest of our life until retirement, whenever that comes. And it's going to have an effect on us. If we want to heal our academic lives, we need to start by recognizing this, that work is hard. It just is. And there's no easy way around it. So the beginning of our healing process is learning to adapt to that reality, learning to work hard with contentment. Now, before I say any more about this, I just want to acknowledge that it is a tremendous privilege to be doing academic work. You get to sit and manage your own time. You come out of it with marketable skills. In fact, you're not even really doing a job, right? You're paying to go there and acquire skills. And many people would do anything to be in your situation. So we should be sober about our academic lives as we think about this privileged form of work that we have. But even with all its benefits and its different nature, it's still a kind of work and it takes a toll. So we have to learn to be diligent workers. In the same way that distance runners build the skills and endurance to last for a long race. And you're doing that. This is the good news. I'm not going to tell you anything new right now with this. You've been training in this for a long time. It's how you got to college. It's what you've been learning while you've been here. Keep up the good work. Become diligent workers. But one thing that will help us in this kind of diligence is learning to find contentment and peace in the midst of the work that we do. Brother Lawrence was a 17th century monk living in France. And he grew up in extreme poverty. So much poverty that when he was old enough, he joined the army just because of the free meals that they offered. He ended up fighting in the 30 Years' War, which left him with a physical disability. He limped the rest of his life and felt physically clumsy when he tried to do things, but also deep emotional scars that he was never really able to talk about with anybody afterward. It affected him powerfully. After the war, he rededicated his life to God and decided to join a monastery. And when he got there, Brother Lawrence was given a job working in the kitchen, which was his job the rest of his life. He worked hard in the kitchen, cooking and cleaning every day for the rest of his life. But despite this sort of menial, labor-intensive, sometimes tedious job, he became famous for his connection with God and the spirituality he found in even the most tedious tasks. People would come around from all around to talk to him and learn from him, hear his thoughts. His supervisors collected his thoughts and things for him, and it was later produced as a book which went on to influence generations of Catholics and Protestants. It's called The Practice of the Presence of God, and you can still find it. It's still an incredibly popular book. Brother Lawrence wrote this: Men invent means and methods of coming at God's love. They learn rules and set up devices to remind them of that love. And it seems like a world of trouble to bring oneself into the consciousness of God's presence. Yet it might be so simple. Is it not quicker and easier just to do our common business wholly for the love of Him? It's a powerful idea. And I know many of us feel this way, that it's so much work to try to make ourselves conscious of God's presence. We struggle to make prayer happen. And here comes Brother Lawrence with a different approach. Or we could just do the things that we do entirely for the love of God, in the presence of God, as he talks about in his book. Brother Lawrence learned to encounter God in the midst of his daily work, and that transformed his work into a place of meaning and purposefulness and peace in his life. I've always wanted to be that kind of person, someone who could do any job with joy and diligence, no matter what it was. Sadly, and to be honest, I have learned a lot about this. So I used to be a wreck. I've gotten better. But sadly, my inclination is still the opposite of that. When I know I have a significant bit of work to do, a week that's full of work or a big project, I will procrastinate so much. And then once I get busy, I start fantasizing about how nice it will be when I'm done at the other end of this. I know none of you agree with this, right? No one out there identifies with me. No one's posting in the chat, but feel free to post in the chat if you identify with anything that I'm saying. Just yesterday, I told Lorraine, man, I can't wait for these 2 weeks to be over. And that came from a sincere place, because I was looking at this week and next week and thinking my life will be so much better when I'm done with the fullness of these 2 weeks. And then just a moment after I said it, I realized this is exactly what I'm talking about this week. Why am I saying this? Because I don't want to be somebody who waits until later to live my life. Yeah, you're feeling me, Sarah. I see your comment there, right? I know this is common. Maybe you guys don't want this too. I don't want to be somebody who waits till later to live my life. I don't want to be one of those people who's talking about when the weekend comes, living for the weekend, or can't wait till Miller time after work, right? It's normal to dread the things that are coming up on our schedule, to look at a full day. For some of us, this is the morning, is for Natasha right now, to look at our full day and say, oh, I don't want to do this. That is a normal reaction to hard work. But then there's this next step that God invites us into of learning to be present to our work and present to God and find contentment even in the midst of our tasks. It's not an easy thing. It's probably a lifelong journey. But imagine how good it gets if we can develop that skill and how much it will help us. Now, in addition to being contented in our work, we also need to learn how to rest. This is baked into the idea of work in the Bible. In the first creation story, we saw that God rested on the seventh day. And for the Jewish people, this means that rest is a holy, God-ordained activity. When you're resting, you're doing God's will. This was an incredibly countercultural teaching when the Bible was written. The ancient neighbors to the Israelites, like the Babylonians, often had creation stories that described human beings not being made in God's image, but human beings being made by the gods to serve as slaves to the gods. And this then made it very easy for the ruling classes in these societies, who often viewed themselves as children of the gods, to justify enslaving their people and using their people and viewing them as tools of labor. We could easily fall into the same problem in our capitalist societies, where we tend to be judged by what we produced, and people are seen as consumers and producers. In contrast, the Bible argues that all humans are made in God's image, not just the ruling elite, and that everybody deserves, and in fact is supposed to take rest. Sabbath teaches us that our value does not come from our labor. Now, I know we talk about rest a lot. We've had multiple talks on the Sabbath. There's a reason we hit this topic so much. In my experience, most college students I meet are not good at rest. They work 7 days a week because they believe they will fail or fall behind if they stop. I've talked to many of you who will just say, I don't think I could do what I need to do if I took a day off every week. When students do take breaks, even breaks in the middle of their day, they often feel guilty because deep down, they believe that they always have to be producing, or they'll fall behind, or I don't know what. Maybe something's wrong with them if they're not producing. This is why taking a Sabbath is so important. A 24-hour rest each week gives us this extended experience, this regular experience of living without the shadow of productivity hanging over us, guilt-free. Our minds can slow down and we can appreciate the world around us. I know many of you think you could never do this, but countless CCF students have done it before you over the years and found it so helpful they decided to make it a permanent part of their academic lives and then carried it into life after college. So consider building rest into your weekly rhythm and your daily rhythm too. And especially now in this time of COVID isolation, make sure that at least some of your rest involves a break from your screens. Go lie down, take a walk, get some sunlight on your skin, take a bath if you have a tub in your place. And remember as you do it that this is God's gift to you, that you are not defined by your work. Finally, we need to replace our fears and insecurities, which make our work so much more stressful than it needs to be. Since we were little, some of us have been taught that we simply have to achieve or else. If we get less than excellent grades, we were lectured, we were punished. People would compare us to high-achieving siblings or friends. We were told that our entire future hinged on our academic performance today, so you better work hard and get good grades. And we internalized those messages with the result that always over our heads there's this ambiguous sense of dread that we had best not fail or else. I shouldn't have to say it, but this worldview is completely incompatible with faith in God. If we really believe that doing bad on this week's exam or even this class in this semester torpedoes our lives and our ability to live good, fulfilling, happy lives, then we do not believe in a God who has any involvement or concern for us at all. But those messages run deep, and so we need to actively replace those fear-based messages we internalized with better narratives. When we catch ourselves with those feelings, we need to stop and call them out. That is a wrong belief, Chris. And then remind ourselves of the truths, that God has our backs, that we're going to come out of this graduates from excellent private colleges in the US, that there are millions of career options out there other than the one we might have our mind on right now. And we can't possibly know what jobs or positions we'll end up occupying or where we'll live or who we'll be with. And that having a good life is much more dependent on who we are becoming as people than on what grade a professor gives my work this week. These narratives are fear-killing narratives, and we need to own them. Let's replace our fear of failure with wonder at where God may be taking us. Once we remove fear from the equation, we can use a test for its actual intended purposes. This test you're taking this week or whenever it is, your final's coming up, that's an opportunity. It's a chance to see how well you've been learning the things that you have been paying your professors to teach you. Remember, you're the customer here. You're paying them to give you something that you want. Take that test and find out how well that's going. Are you internalizing it as well as you hoped? Do you need to work a little harder on this one? Come back at it in another class later on? Is your professor doing a good job teaching it to you? We can stop working for our grades and start making our grades work for us, which is what they're there for in the first place. I think one reason it's hard for us to do this, to hold this perspective, is that we have learned to attach our identity to our performance. You've heard me talk about this before, but I can't say it enough. We need to learn to stop doing that. I was never a top student in grade school. I did fine. I was like a mostly B's with a few A's kind of student. But when I got to high school, I managed to test into the advanced track classes. And then in my first semester in high school, I got straight A's for the first time ever, as far as I can remember, or at least in years. And I thought, what's this? What does this mean? And it was like a whole new horizon opened up for me. I could be one of those students. I could have the 4.0 through college. and I was through high school and then go to a top college afterward. And slowly, my sense of identity began to change. This became part of who I was and how I saw myself. I was one of the smart kids. My family members were impressed and would tell me they were proud of my performance. I would share freely with people about how I was going to go to a good college and become a doctor and all of those things. And in just a few years, I had somehow made academic achievement an essential part of my identity. But the problem with that, once we internalize achievement as part of our identity, we can't fail. And not only that, we have to be at the top because our sense of self is at stake. Am I great? Am I mediocre? Am I a failure? Not, am I doing good work? Did I fail at that task that I tried just now? But I am a failure or I am a success. And these stakes follow us in every class we go to, every test we take, every paper we turn in. They hang over our heads. No wonder we get so anxious about our work. This is not some challenging, difficult process of learning, which pays off in the end. It's become a referendum on our value and worth as a human being. If we're going to heal our academic lives, we need to release those messages about who we are. Just do it right now. If you identify with me, that you have taken achievement, academic achievement and success and a future career into your identity, just release it right now. Just say, no, that's not who I am. I am an image bearer of the creator of the universe, as is everybody else. And my image and my worth will not be determined by these things. I am taking this test, writing this paper, doing this work because I believe in it and I want to learn it, and this is for me and for what I want to do in the world for the sake of God and others. And that is why this is important to me. One technique I found very helpful in this, in dealing with my own anxieties and fears, is called the 5 whys. Here's what you do. When you're having some kind of emotional crisis or issue, you stop and ask yourself why 5 times. So I'm feeling anxious about my grades right now. Why am I feeling anxious? Or maybe not even now. Let's start with, I feel general anxiety. Why do I feel anxious? Because I have a big test coming up this week and I'm worried about how I'll do on it. Well, why am I worried about how I'll do on the test? Because I feel like if I get a bad grade on this test, I might get a bad grade in the class. Now, I could stop there and realize maybe I won't. Maybe it won't be so terrible. But I might get a bad grade in this class. Let's go further. 3rd why. Why am I afraid of getting a bad grade in this class? Because I'm worried if I get a bad grade in this class, it will affect my overall GPA and everything else, and that might affect whether I get into the perfect, like the top grad school in the program I wanted to get into. Why am I worried about that? Because on some level, I feel like if I don't get into the best grad school, and then I won't be able to have the career I want, I won't have the future that I want. Why does that make me scared? Because I feel like ultimately I won't be happy or taken care of if I don't go down that one path that I've latched onto. I asked 5 whys and got to the bottom of the deep fears that are driving my current anxiety. And now that I know them, I can call them out. If I fail at this path, there's like 1,000 other paths out there. There's millions of people doing work, not the job I'm looking to get into. And plus there's other grad schools and people go on to be successful even if they don't go to the top school, and so on and so forth. And then I can bring these fears, these core fears, to God and say, God, help me to remove these fears from who I am deep inside. Now, I know for many of us, we feel if we succeed at this, if we strip out the motivations of fear and insecurity, we're going to have a problem. And that problem is our motivation will be gone. What's going to get me to do my work if I'm not scared all the time? If I don't see my identity connected to it? Can we just stop and acknowledge how sad a motivation that is? That we have to punish our souls constantly to get ourselves to do work? The answer is simple. We go back to that first thing we learned about why we work, and we replace our terrible motivations with good ones. The desire to create and serve, bring beauty and impact to the world around us. The joy and satisfaction of working purposefully and doing something well. The beauty of learning and of being part of God's abundant blessing toward the world. How much better is that? I know we all bring different issues to this, and I've been talking for a while, so I want to put this back to you and ask you to reflect. This is just a kind of a brief outline of the things I said in my talk tonight. Please don't try to think about all of it. Pick the thing that has resonated with you most and think about how it's affecting you and how you want to grow or change in that area. And as you do that, I'm going to pray for us. We'll have a song response. Emily Gow was nice enough and took the time out of her busy week to create a song for us to and think about and bring to God. So I'm going to play that for us, that recording. And as I do, be reflective. And then I see some of you are sharing already. Please continue sharing how you feel you need to change your relationship with work or with your academic life as we go. Lord, we are broken in so many ways in relationship to work. And there's so many things we need to learn about how to do work with contentment and with noble and good purposes. So Lord, we ask for you to heal our broken selves and bring new life in us, even in the places of work where so many folks just don't want to deal with it at all, where it's tedious and boring. Help us, Lord, to bring life for ourselves and others, even in those places. Amen. Please continue reflecting as we hear the song.
Check one, check one, check one. I think it's working. All right. Hey, my name's Emily. I am a senior at Fitzer College, and I've been trying to record this forever. So hopefully this works this time. I'm going to be doing Reckless Love by Corey Ashbury. To turn auto scroll on. I'm sorry. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming
All right, so that concludes our Friday Fellowship for today. Thank you, Chris, for that great talk. I really enjoyed the part about Sabbathing. That's something I've dabbled in, and I do have to say that when it's worked out, it's been a really good way to kind of de-stress and detox from the week. And it's surprising how much that actually helps reinvigorate me, rather than take away from the time that I would have spent working or would have spent being productive. So thank you, Chris, for that reminder again to rest and focus on having, reinvigorating ourselves, and not just always having the mindset of work, 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 and produce. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight, and hopefully we will see you at the Zoom Hangout after Friday Fellowship. Have a good night.